You're watching the free version of this tutorial. Upgrade to premium for all footage and projects and exclusive content. Hello, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at screen replacements in Mocha. Now, screen replacements are a very popular task to use Mocha for because the planar tracker really is perfect for doing that sort of work. And what we're actually going to be looking at here is not just the process of getting the screen replacement in, but also talking about potential problems and potential pitfalls you might fall into. Let's create our first track then. Right, so let's start off by finding the first frame that we're going to track. And what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for a place where we can see the screen nice and clearly. If I take us over here, we can still see this, the screen quite well, but obviously the phone is tilted at a bit of an angle, and on the other side as well we have angle and reflections and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and find a good frame to start with, which is probably going to be around about here, something nice and clear and clean and in focus. And come up to my X-Spline layer tool and just select that. So I've taken us all the way out to the edges. I've given us a little bit of extra space. I've taken in not just the tracking pattern that we have already in place here, but also a bit of the edge as well. Let's again just leave all of this stuff at default settings to begin with and just track this forwards. Okay, good. And then let's go back to the keyframe there and track us backwards now. All right, excellent. So let's click the button to go to the next keyframe. There we go. So this is our start frame. And let's turn on the surface and turn off the transform box. Now, with something like this, it can be a little tricky to see where the actual edges of the surface should go because we've got black on black and we've got a bit of a curve as well. So what I'm going to suggest is try and find something along here where we do have a nice amount of contrast. So for example, the point of the triangle on this side, and we go down to the bottom right and we'll do the point on the triangle on this side as well. If you have a little look down there, we do have a little bit of curvature going along there. We'll sort that out in just a second. And if we go down to the bottom left-hand corner here, and we'll take the last one, and I'm just going to try and line this up now with the two edges on the plus. So we've got that one edge there and that edge there, and that should bring us fairly flush. Okay, let's go up to the top again, turn off the shapes, and turn on the grid. Because this should get us in around about the right area here. And I can just now, using the lines on the grid and the lines over here, I can just sort of tweak this up. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, and we'll see the reason for that in just a moment. But let's play that through. And actually, if we look through this, it's not done too bad a job at all. It looks like it's fitting quite nicely. Let's turn off the grid up here and go to our insert clip now and turn that into a grid. So now we've got our 16 by 16 grid in as the insert clip. Let's turn off the surface as well now. And let's just play this back and see if there's any strange movement going on whatsoever. Okay, as this is checking out quite nicely so far, what we're going to do now is try and test this out, not just with our simple insert grid here, but if we come over to the insert clip now, we can come in and choose a different input or choose our own clip to import. So if I come to my import clip, and I come to my footage here, and let's take the phone screen. And it's just a still clip, so we don't really need to worry too much about any of this other stuff here. Just hit import, and that will import my phone screen in for me right about there. And we can play that back and just see how that's going to look. Not too bad. Now, one of the things, because we're getting quite close to this being workable, a lot faster than I expected actually. Because we're getting quite close to this being workable, what I want to do is make sure that this is lining up nicely. So let's turn off the insert clip for a second, turn our surface back on, And here's a way of increasing the brightness so we can see the visibility of this line a little bit better. So if I come up to the top of the viewer and click on this enable brightness scaling here, I can change the gamma, click and screw this up and around so we can more easily see the line where the screen actually is. So let's just bring that up there and use my X key to come down to the bottom here. And actually that's sitting pretty flush with where it's meant to be anyway. And if I want to turn this off, it's not looking great for the preview, all I have to do is click on the brightness scaling one more time, and that will turn it off. And if I click again, that toggles it back and remembers the previous settings that we had. Let's just turn that off again. We'll come to View and go to Zoom to Fit. So we see this back again. Excellent. So let's come back to our insert clip and we will choose our phone screen, the one that we imported before, turn the surface off and hit play. And that's working out very nicely for us. Cool. Let's just hit that to none again for 1 second. And I'm just going to call this one Screen 1 track. And let's just turn process back off on this so we don't accidentally process anything out on there. And I'm going to turn the layer outlines on again. Now, and zoom in a little bit here. Now, we had a lot of information in the middle that managed to carry us through, but you probably heard a little bit of surprise in my voice when this tracked in as well as it did, because I did something that we shouldn't really do, and that is include things, especially on the edges, that don't share the coplanar movement. Well, Ben, of course it shares the coplanar movement, we're just tracking the screen in. Yeah, that's true, but if we have a little look through here, we see something happening on the edge. And what do we see on the edge? We see reflection popping in. And that motion is not coplanar. We understand that it's a reflection or a glint of the light, but Mocha can't discern that sort of stuff. So when we have reflections, especially towards the edges, that can throw a bit of a spanner in the works. So if you're finding things are a little bit tricky, have a little look through your footage one more time and see if there are any reflections that are coming in or any sort of bright things that are coming in to ruin the day. And if there are, well, what can we do about it? Well, the one thing we can do about it is make sure that we don't include them in our shape. So if I create a new layer here, just right click just to close the shape off. I could easily take something like this here, which is a bit of a weird and wonderful looking area, but this describes all of that movement of the plane there, even that there, describes all the movement of the plane without coming close enough to the edge to be affected by those reflections. So if I track that through quickly and backwards, and turn my surface on, come back to my keyframes, do it properly, turn the surface on, and we'll just quickly move that into position. Get an estimated area there. I will just zoom that out to fit again. Lovely, and turn off the outlines, turn on the grid, and we'll just play that back. And as you can see, we've still got that same consistency of motion. So we haven't lost anything by tracking that smaller area. The other thing we can do is use a track mat. And that's something we'll get to when we look at screen replacement again in a later exercise. We're going to look at a more tricky screen replacement in a later exercise. Let's see what it looks like if I insert my phone screen again. It's a cool thing, once you've imported the footage once, we can use that multiple times on different layers, and that's not looking too bad whatsoever. I want to change it up a little bit. We can still do that. We've still got full control over that there. There we go. As we mentioned in the previous exercise, the surface has no keyframes to work with. So whenever we make a change on one frame, it just updates that planar surface without any keyframes. So it just offsets the tracking data across the entire surface. And so that data now is ready for export. And if we're working with Mocha Pro, we can use the insert module and render that out directly. If you're working with Mocha AE, then this is ready to export the tracking data out as it is. Well, this exercise is called Simple Screen Insert and AdjustTrack. And we haven't seen the AdjustTrack being used yet. And there's a good reason for that, in that our tracks have worked out quite nicely. So we haven't had the need to use any sort of adjustment. And that's how it should be. If you can figure out a way of getting a good track from your footage without having to use AdjustTrack, that is the way I would absolutely recommend you doing it. It's much better if you've got a track that's not quite working yet, much better to scrap what you've got and then try something a little bit different before jumping straight in to the AdjustTrack here. And let's see our little problem. I'm going to turn on my surface now. I'll turn off the outlines, and this is a new track that I've done, and I purposely made it like this so we don't have enough data to get a proper track. And let's have a little look. And let's turn off the outlines again and play that through and have a look. So I'll turn my grid on. And you can see the movement itself is pretty all right. But let's have a little look. Let's zoom in here. And you can see our top right-hand corner has drifted a lot. And you can see that just drifting out of the way. As we move it forward again, drifting out of the way. Not good, not good at all. So I've always said that we can't keyframe our surface. And that's true. We can't directly keyframe it. But what we can do is use the AdjustTrack module to help tweak it and guide it in the right direction. So the first thing we have to do before we go into the AdjustTrack is to make sure that we're on a frame where everything is perfect. And we can see here, this is our best frame. This is our master frame. Because as soon as we go into the AdjustTrack now, it's going to create a reference for our 4 points here. And although we can change this afterwards, it's a lot of hassle and you're much better off getting it right from the start. So let's see what the AdjustTrack is going to do. Let's turn off my grid and I'm just going to zoom in. So hold down Z and pan around, hold down X, let go. And let's go and have a look at the parameters on the AdjustTrack. Now, first thing on the left is where we can start setting up reference points. We don't have to do that. We've already got a reference point working for us from our master frame. And we will, of course, come back to this in a more advanced exercise. And then we have our nudge. And this is what's going to help us to get our track back on board. So in the nudge, we have our 4 corners. And we have the ability to nudge them up, down, left, right. And in the middle, we have an auto. Well, let's look at our top right-hand corner to begin with. And I'm just going to move this around until we start to see things drifting away there. It's on that frame 35, where things are going to start to drift. So up till now, everything's looking pretty good. We can see that because we have a look at our zoom windows. We can see our master frame at the top and how that compares to the current frame. So these at the moment are identical. Perfect. That's what we like. So I'm going to set a keyframe here. We can either do that manually by adding a key over in the key area. We've seen that before. Or by making any sort of movement in the nudge. We can nudge things one to the left and then back to the right again. So let's move this again and check out how it's looking on the current frame zoom window. And you can see it's drifting away now. Drifting, drifting, drifting. And what I'm looking for is the point of absolute drift. Where does it stop drifting? Because that's where we're going to set our new keyframe. And it's going to be around about here, around about frame 7. So now what we can do is we can either manually move it into the right sort of area, or we can nudge it using the nudge buttons here, or the keyboard shortcuts, T, B, F, and H. So on the keyboard, and it actually works out in a little bit of a cross style, so, you know, makes sense. Or if we're close enough to the area and there's a distinct area that we can be looking at, we can hit auto, and Mocha will try to find an area that matches what it thinks it should be. Yeah, it's going to be a really tricky thing to find automatically because it's a very nondescript area. So in this case, we're much better off just manually finding it. That's probably going to be around about there. And as we move this back now, what the AdjustTrack is doing is it's taking the original track data and then adding our little offsets to it. So if we've got the offset right, which we don't in that place, if we have the offset right, then this will fit in quite nicely. And you shouldn't see another drift. But if we got the offset wrong, or if we need to add some more keyframes in there, which I think we do here. So this is looking, up till now, that's looking all right around about there. So I'm going to add another keyframe on that. And you see that's drifting off and away again. So what I'm going to do is look for the point of absolute maximum drift. Try and bring that back. What I want to do is add the absolute minimum number of keyframes. Because the more keyframes we add, the more jittery everything's going to look. And one of the things I like to do is just to come over to a keyframe that I've added that's in the middle of two other ones and just hit minus and see if that makes the result better or worse. In this case, it didn't work. I'm going to take another little look through and just colour any ones and colour any other frames that we don't need. You can see if we're starting to chase our tail a little bit, which we kind of are there, then that's a sure sign that we're going to be better off just retracking. So once we've done one corner, we come down and we do the other one, or the other ones. We've got a good idea where that one is. And we find the point of maximum drift one more time. Bring that in, around about there. That's drifting up before it drifts back again. And after we've added a keyframe, if you have a look and you see a big jump from one frame to the next, what that often means is that you've just missed the point of absolute drift by one frame. So you can happily go in and then just delete that one there. It's a time-consuming process, and you might end up, just as I'm doing a little bit here, sort of chasing your tail. Looking a little bit better there. And that looks a little bit better, getting a more consistent result. Turn the grid on. Have a little look how that's looking in the grid, see if we're getting any big weird bumps. Not really, it's looking a bit better. So this has helped out a lot. And remember, the AdjustTrack isn't keyframing the track itself. The tracking data is still underneath all of this stuff. All we're doing here is just adding a little bit of an extra offset onto our track to help try and fix any big bits of drift. If you're making adjustments every frame or every 2 frames, forget it, don't do it. Bad tracking data is probably worse than having no tracking data whatsoever. My preference is always try to get a better track before you go down the AdjustTrack road. So I've seen too many people try to chase their tails trying to get the perfect tracking data using their own judgment and AdjustTrack. AdjustTrack is great when there's drift. That's what it's there for. It's not great if you've got a bouncy, wobbly track going all over the place. This is not really where you should be trying to fix that. You should be trying to fix that back in the track module, tracking something else, tracking something coplanar, or changing up your tracking parameters. And that's what we're going to be looking at in the next exercise. So in this one, we've had a little look at how we start to build up simple screen inserts and the things we should be looking out for to track there, and how we use the AdjustTrack to help fix a bit of drift. We'll be coming back to do this insert in the host, and we'll also be looking at a more advanced screen insert as well, where we don't have as good a view of the screen, so things start getting a bit trickier. But the next exercise is going to be focused on the tracking again, and we'll be delving down into how to get the best track and the most appropriate track for the type of data that you're after. So we'll be looking much more in the parameters of the pre-processing, the motion, and the search area. So that's it for simple screen inserts and the AdjustTrack. I'll see you in the next exercise.